So, man, thanks for coming back on and joining me again. Really much appreciated.
Absolutely, brother. Anytime, brother.
So before we actually get started, man, I just want to ask you. We have It's been a couple of months since we did the top 10 movies of the year, um, and now we're here doing the top 5 Quentin Tarantino films. So I kind of want to know before we get down to our top 5, have you always enjoyed Quentin Tarantino, or is this just something I brought it up so you were like, hey, I'm gonna watch them all?
No, I've been a huge fan of his from back in the '90s, back in the day, brother.
Yeah,
It all started with for me. It all started with Reservoir Dogs,
right.
and I'm not giving away any of my top five, but that was I mentioned Reservoir Dogs because that was the first time I ever heard the guy's name.
Right.
That's the first time I ever heard Tarantino's name, right?
Yeah.
And and then he did and then he did one called True Romance, which I don't even remember. I remember bits and pieces of it,
Hmm.
but I always judge a movie on how many times will I watch it. Like, you know what I mean?
Hmm.
And I think I've only ever seen that one once. I've seen most of Tarantino's films more than once. I
Mm.
mean, and some of them I've seen dozens of times. But but uh um True Romance wasn't one that I'm not really that familiar with. But then in 1994 I graduated high school,
Hmm.
and that summer a little movie came out you might have heard of called Pulp Fiction.
Hmm.
And that movie blew my head right off my shoulder. I
Yeah.
mean, I already knew who Samuel L. Jackson was,
Right.
but I never seen him, like, I've seen him in other movies, M&F or this, M&F or that, but uh that movie, just there's not a bad scene in that movie.
Hmm.
Like, I can't pick a scene where I'm like, that scene was stupid. They don't need that. And the way he did it, kind of out of order, like it wasn't exactly in order timeline wise. It kind of made it more interesting, and then you sprinkle in like Bruce Willis in there, and Ving Rhames in there, and uh Travolta, and like, so you mix all these little things together and you don't really know what the plot is,
Yeah.
but you can't stop watching it.
Right.
And that's the thing about Pulp Fiction.
And I think
But I mean, we'll talk about that.
yeah, we'll talk about that. But I do agree. I think that's that's just Quentin Tarantino in general. I think I'm not going to say all, but a majority of the movies, a good probably 80% of the chunk of movies he's released are like that. They're like from beginning to end, what's going to happen? We don't know how it's going to end. He kind of has a M. Night Shyamalan type of feel. Like he changes plots very quickly, and you just don't know what plot he's going with.
Right.
But man,
Exactly.
it's yeah, Quentin Tarantino. I'm not going to say anything because one of the movies on here is the first actual Tarantino movie I watched, so I'm not going to say anything. But before we jump into
Mhm.
our top 5, you and I have both watched movies other than Tarantino that we told each other to watch, and I want to talk about them real quick. Mine
Sure,
being
sure.
Ghostbusters Afterlife, and yours being the King Richard movie.
Correct.
So, man, let me go first. Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
I always say Ghostbusters because I love saying it with like a Boston or a New York accent. I think it's hilarious when I do it. But so
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters Afterlife. Holy
Mhm.
shit! Ow, ow, ow. Let me tell you something. When I watched this movie, there
Mhm.
were tears of joy. Emotional damage
Yes.
was happening with Ghostbusters
Yes.
Afterlife, and I
Yeah.
would like guys can go back to the top 10 movies we did at the beginning of the year, but
Right.
that movie was something special, and it was so out of the ordinarily great that you wouldn't expect it to be as great as it was.
Correct. The
And then
trailer doesn't do it justice.
no, and see that was no, and the trailer to me they had the Ghostbusters Afterlife trailer was kind of like a Marvel trailer. They showed you
Right.
very little of what exactly was going to happen. And I mean, from the first scene, which, you know, I'm not going to give anything away, but we see one of the main characters kind of dying. Kind of, we realize what happened after the second Ghostbusters, where this guy
Right.
went, and then the kids inherit a house, and it's just from there, it's complete chaos. And I was like, you know, at the point where I can tell if I go during a movie, I know that's exactly the point where it's going to get good. But I never seen myself huffing and puffing once in this movie. I was like, Paul Rudd does a great job. Not a main character, but
Yes.
he's a big character in it, but not the main. Does a great
Sure.
job in it. I thought the mother of the kids did a fantastic job in the movie. And of course, the two kids, McKenna Grace, they were great. I mean, I don't think you could have done a different movie the way they did it.
Right. And you know, from being a kid, when I first saw Ghostbusters, the first one, I was around 7 or 8 years old when I first saw it. And I saw it at the drive-in. I remember that. I remember my parents taking me to the drive-in to see it. And I was enthralled by it from day one. But so have what happened with the Ghostbusters Answer the Call one with the women.
Right.
I was like really irritated about that. Like, I was really mad. Like, it left a bad taste in my mouth, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And no, nothing against them. It's the whole plot and the way it was done was wrong.
Yeah.
And I have nothing against those ladies because they're all very funny actresses, all of them. But it just the way it was done, it annoyed me.
I see it this way, Al. I see it as, I'm going to use Superman for example. The Superman Returns, Man of Steel, all those are potentially great movies, but it just got a bad script and it got a bad director.
Right.
And I think that's what happened with the female-led Ghostbusters. It could have been great. Sure, it was funny in its own sort of ways, but if it would have gotten the right director, the right script, instead of just jumping into the thing, I think it could have had a potential to possibly do what Afterlife did.
Right. And the thing is, you don't have a soul if you didn't cry in Afterlife.
Oh man!
At the end, when the moment you see that, the moment you see the little girl's got the proton pack, and you see that hand kind of help her.
Oh man!
That part right there, that's no spoiler. That's giving nothing away. I'm just saying, like that.
But that was so unexpected, though. It was so unexpected. Like you had mentioned to me, because that's not a spoiler, because you didn't say that in the potential, but you said there's just such a big kind of throw off in the end that you're not going to see coming. And of course, I'm sitting there guessing, okay, it could be this and could this, but no. And then I'm like, oh my goodness! And you see all four Ghostbusters come in together, and it was an emotional. Not a train wreck. I didn't cry that much, but it was emotional for me loving the first two Ghostbusters films.
What makes it harder is that Egon is actually really dead. So
Harold Ramis.
That when they're all together, kind of reunited, it's like those three and his ghost, and it's like it tugs on your heartstrings, because you know that Egon's actually really dead.
Yeah.
That's the thing. Not that they meant for that to happen. It just happened. I'm sure if Harold Ramis was still alive, he would have been in it. But
right.
In some capacity, but he probably wouldn't have looked as good as he did.
All right, man. Al, you watched my favorite movie of the year last year. Besides Spider-Man, because we recorded it before it come out, but it was King Richard with Will Smith. Tell me your thoughts on that.
I loved it. I absolutely love that movie. I really appreciate you for bringing it to my attention because I'm a fan of Will Smith as it is, but
Sure.
like I had off heard the story of the Williams sisters when I was younger, when they were younger, when they first started coming up into tennis. And
Mhm.
me being a sports nut, I pay attention to most sports, but tennis is not one that I pay attention to. The Williams sisters put tennis on the map.
Right.
I mean, back in the day, there were characters in tennis that people cared about. There was John McEnroe's because he used to yell at the referees all the time. And then a little bit later on, there was Pete Sampras, who just could not be beat. He was like the Tiger Woods of tennis for a while, and nobody could beat him. And then he finally got beaten. And then for a while there was no real big major stars that you could name in tennis until the Williams sisters. And then it was not just the Williams sisters, but whoever could almost hang with them, right?
Right.
So there was the Jennifer Capriati's of the world and the Chris Everett's so anybody that could actually hang with them was something because they just kept winning titles and it was
Mhm.
ridiculous. So going and watch this movie, I'm thinking, I didn't know that they came from Compton. I didn't know that they had it as rough as they did. And I didn't know Richard's story,
Mhm.
like his side of the story, and watching it and through his eyes and what he did and kind of the moves that he made to make sure that they ended up where they ended up. And obviously, just like any dad, he was supportive, but he went beyond that. I mean,
He
he almost
knew.
acted as if as their quasi manager, and he knew exactly. He had this plan
Right.
and followed through with it. And they came out on the other end, two of the biggest stars in the history of the sport.
Exactly. He knew what they were worth, when they were going to be worth this amount of money, where they were going to be projected. This guy, I and I don't want to put words in his mouth because they didn't really say this in the movie or his story, but I think he was living life through them, but he wasn't.
Yeah,
He's not like a child, like a child movie actor where like Macaulay Culkin got, sued his family for all the money. He wasn't doing that, but he was living life through them, just not cheating them out of money. Just I wanted to succeed in life. I couldn't. There was stuff holding me back. There's nothing holding you back here but yourself, and I'm not going to let yourself hold you back. And I thought
I don't know.
I thought it was great.
I don't know if they all offered up the nominees for Best Picture because they usually do the Oscars in February.
Okay.
I don't, but I almost guarantee you that that one's going to be one of the nominees.
And you know what? If it gets best picture, I'm not going to be upset at all. It was Will Smith. Just he can do anything. I think like we've seen him play a
Yeah,
superhero. He's great at anything he does.
yeah, pretty much. I mean, the guy played Muhammad Ali for God's sake. I mean, he could do whatever. He could do a comedy. He could be like Hitch. I always liked Hitch. Like that was
Yeah.
a good movie. Pretty funny, him and Kevin James and that. But like, or he could do like I Am Legend, where he's like, the only person left alive in the world,
Right.
or he could do. Did you ever see the one? What was it? Was it 7 pounds?
7 pounds. Yeah. Well, that was where he had like this disease, and he was meeting like seven people, and they were getting certain organs or something like that. That was the big thing at the end of it.
Right, that was the reveal, and
Right.
he was gonna kill him. He was gonna kill himself with
Right.
the jellyfish.
Yes.
I just didn't understand why did he pick that particular way to go out. I just couldn't figure that out.
Yeah. All right, man. Look,
Yeah.
it's
Thank you for Thank you for King Richard.
yeah,
Dylan.
man. Appreciate you. I was gonna watch Ghostbusters anyways, but you actually gave it a bigger. You're somebody now that I can trust in movies, and I know that it's probably going to be great, just because we have the same type of, we have the same type of feel for movies, and so I appreciate you actually giving me the courage to watch Ghostbusters because I would have watched
I
it,
know
but I
you were
would have
worried
watched it with
about it.
different eyes.
I remember you being worried about it disappointing you, and I promised you it wouldn't. I
And it
promised you it
didn't.
wouldn't. That's cool.
All right, man. So let's go ahead and start this thing off. I'm going to start at number 5. You can go from 1 to 5, however you want to do it. I'm just going to go in descending
Well,
order.
I'm going to go in the same direct. I'll go in the same direction you're going. So we'll go 5-1.
All right, Al, go first. What is your top? Here we go with top 5. Number 5 on your list for the best Quentin Tarantino movies.
Well, I'll tell you what. To be honest with you, narrowing these down was tough.
Right. It was so hard. I had to. Here's what I did.
So,
I wrote down all the movies, and I said, you know what?
He's ever done.
Right. And I said, okay, I didn't really care for these two. This one is good, but it's not top 5. So I think I nailed my top 5 based on A, are they rewatchable for me? B, the story, and 3, just how good of a movie it was and how great it was acted in.
To me, distinguishing 4, 5, and 6, like, so 6 being the one I left out.
Sure.
Okay. So distinguishing 4, 5, and 6 to me, I had to figure out. I had to sit and think and wonder, like, try to remember which one I've seen the most, and that's how they got the higher ranking based on how many times I've seen it versus 4, 5, and versus the other 2.
Okay, got you.
So that's how I picked it. So my number 5, then, if we're going reverse order, my number 5 is Django Unchained.
Okay.
I like that movie because I love spaghetti westerns in general. But when I heard Quentin Tarantino's doing one, not only that, but the main character is Jamie Foxx, and Leonardo DiCaprio's in it, and Christopher Waltz, and I'm thinking, okay, cool. I got to check this out. So I was skeptical at first. I thought when I saw the trailer for it, I think it was 2011 or 2012 when that came out. And when I saw the trailer for it, I was like, okay, it looks fun, but I might not like it. I might not love it. And then I watched it, and I just like the story and the characters. And if Tarantino is good at anything, he's good at character development, even in his shortest movies. Like even in Reservoir Dogs, which is like, I think it's like 90 minutes.
Right.
There's character development in that movie, in the short period of time. Now, the Django is a longer movie. The Django is, damn near 3 hours, but it keeps you enthralled the whole time. The whole story about a freed slave out to rescue his wife from, in Mississippi, and the German bounty hunters on his tail. So the whole thing, it keeps you in suspense. People are trying to kill him, and at the same time, he's trying to save his wife. So it's like the whole thing just kind of keeps you going. And it's got a lot of characters. DiCaprio's fucking awesome in it, I gotta say. But anyway, I just love that character, DiCaprio's character. But that's my number 5, Django Unchained.
Man, Django, it's crazy what Quentin Tarantino can do. He made the Ku Klux Klan, and he brought him in the movie, and I was nervous when I seen it. I said, "Oh my God!" But he did it so. He did it so hilarious that you kind of forgot that they were there. But then you have to remember, right, when is this movie being made? This was the 30s, the 20s, whichever time period he was using, it fit perfectly, but he was not using it to be, he has like an unapologetic way of writing. Like, he's not going to apologize for anything because it means every little line in the movie means something.
Mm-hmm.
And then, I'm not the biggest Leonardo DiCaprio fan. I mean, but I know once a movie comes out, I'm not going to rush to see it, but I know it's probably going to be good just because he has this, right, he has a taste of picking fantastic films. And this Django was great. And then learning that, when he smashed his hand down on the table and he actually broke the glass, he actually ripped a tendon in his hand, and that they kept it in.
Yeah.
It made it real. And Django is also on my list, but I'm not gonna screw it up
Right.
by
You won't
just saying
divulge
where
it.
it's at. But
A little side note
sure,
on the Django. I don't know if you know this.
okay,
The Django is the movie he made the most money on.
really,
Out of all those good movies, even Pulp Fiction, he did better. He made more money on Django than any other movie
I can believe
that
that
he's
though.
ever made.
I can
Even
believe that
Kill.
though.
Is it crazy?
It's nuts. My number 5
Okay.
is Reservoir Dogs from 1992, and
Yes.
it could have made top 3, but
Yeah.
there's little things that I took out because I was like, you know what, it can't make it because of this. But let me tell you what got me. And you mentioned the character building. A lot of if you're the kind of person that likes a John Wick movie that there's all the action and there's
Yes.
barely talking in it, great. I love
Nope.
those
Yeah.
movies too. But don't go
Yep.
into a Tarantino film thinking you're going to get that. You may get a little bit, but you're going to get a damn
More dialogue.
8,000 page book, basically, if you're reading. And the first scene where these guys are just sitting in the diner eating breakfast. And then, of course, you have the brilliant Steve Buscemi, his character complaining about, why he doesn't tip. He thinks it's, he has his mental conspiracy theory of why he doesn't tip. He thinks it's a game. And then it's crazy to think that the whole movie is them arguing about who set them up, because they were thieves, and it's all this. It was crazy to me at the end of the movie how every single person in there, spoiler alert, dies. Like it was, you're like, oh my God, who's going to get away with money? And you see Steve Buscemi run out the door, but then you hear gunshots and you're like, oh God, he's down. And everybody, it's like, it was one of those things that you did not know what was going to happen in the movie.
Yeah, unbelievable. Reservoir Dogs is my number 6.
Okay.
Believe it or not, because and how the Django beat it out is I've seen the Django a few more times more than Reservoir Dogs.
Right.
I watched when I was in high school. I watched Reservoir Dogs probably like a dozen times, and then I haven't seen it since. Do you know what I'm saying?
Right.
Like I literally have not seen Reservoir Dogs since I was in high school, and we're talking I'm 45 now.
Right.
So it's been a long time since I've seen it, and that's why I put it under the Django, because I can tell you that I've recently watched the Django as recent as within the last month.
And man, it still holds up. The Django still holds up without a doubt. Like I think that's going to be one of the best movies of the past 20 years once it gets to that point.
Right. But like I said, Reservoir Dogs didn't make my top 5, but it was number 6. So for what it's worth.
Okay. All right, Al, your number 4.
My number 4 and my number 3, because I'm sorry, I'm wrong. I have it written down here. My number 4 is Inglourious Basterds.
Okay.
And again, it has a lot of characters. Eli Roth, Brad Pitt. I'm not a huge Pitt fan, and I think that if I remember right, you're not either. But he's absolutely awesome in this movie.
Yeah.
But the whole thing, the whole time period, like the whole thing takes place in World War II, and you just see these people, these characters, these unbelievable characters, and the head Nazi colonel that's basically, in your mind the villain of the movie, is played by what was it, Christoph Waltz,
yeah.
Yeah, he was awesome. Like he was a really good villain, And I'm the kind of guy that roots for villains in the movies. and I've always been that way. Like I've always rooted for, in wrestling, I root for the heels. I always root for the bad guys in movies. And I found myself with him. He was just so ridiculously despicable. I mean, Nazi
Right.
stuff
Yeah.
aside, because I don't sympathize. I don't sympathize with the Nazi party, and I'm not going to say I hated him because he was a Nazi. But what I'm saying was that his character was so ridiculously over the top despicable that I couldn't root for him. I just couldn't.
Right.
And so as I'm watching, I'm just enjoying, and it's really funny. It's really satirical. You know, for what it's worth. But I mean, it's violent. I mean, if people don't like violence, I could see they wouldn't like that, and they definitely won't like next to. But but Inglorious Bastards is my number 4.
All right. So I'm going to get 4 and 3 out of the way because we talked about them. Number 4 to me is Django. We done spoke my piece on that. But since we're here,
Right.
my number 3 is Inglorious Bastards. And I'll tell you why.
Go.
This was, I mean, if the last 2 or the first 2 on here were not on here, I think this could have made number 1. Like if the 2 that he didn't make prior, it could have made number 1. But what surprised me the most was Eli Roth's acting, because he's known as the horror guy, makes these horror movies. He was brilliant in this movie as the Bear Jew. I mean, it was great. And no, I'm not the biggest Brad Pitt fan. But I mean, Brad Pitt stole the movie here. Obviously, he was the lead cast here, but sometimes the lead cast gets overshadowed a lot by a better actor. But I think Brad Pitt, he stole this movie. It was the ending that, and to me, this is one of the endings of Quentin Tarantino that you kind of could guess throughout the middle of what was going to happen. And I feel that it could have, because of that, I could have put it at number 4, number 5. But I just think in general that the story of World War II and what he did, with what he did with Hitler and what he did with the Nazis was just so interesting. And you could see the research that Tarantino does in these movies, and this one especially, that it was just, it's an awesome film. And I rewatched it here a couple of weeks ago, and I still laughed and I still cringed at every part that I did before. But the coolest part is the cameo by Quentin Tarantino, where he's a scout Nazi. He's just laying on the ground. That was the best part, I think.
Yeah, he did cameo a bunch of his movies, not all of them, but when he does show up, it's always not for any reason.
He's always dead.
or in some kind of calamity.
Yeah.
Definitely one that I've seen a bunch of times. And when my son grew up, I watched it with him, and he thought it was like the best movie ever. But I won't go that far. But it definitely
Right.
deserves to be in the top 5, as we're talking top 5.
All right, Al. My number 3 was Inglorious Bastards. We just talked about. What is your number 3 here?
Yes. Well, I wanted to ask you a question.
Sure.
My number 3 is Kill Bill, but do you consider Kill Bill 1 and 2 basically a 2-part one movie, or are they 2 separate movies? Because to me, it's all one big story in 2 volumes.
I would say that. I would say it's one movie because it kind of picks up right where it left off. It's not like a Hangover Part 2 or anything like that. So I consider Kill Bill, because, well, Quentin Tarantino said it's just one big film. Because they filmed it,
right.
They filmed Volume 2 the same time they filmed 1. Like they were just going to make this giant movie, and he just separated it into 2 parts. So fairly, it's one movie.
Okay, fine. So if we're going to do that, then my number 3 is Kill Bill Volumes 1 and 2. If you watch them back to back as one big epic, 3-hour dance. Because what a story. And I don't even know where it came from. I don't know if he wrote it or figured it out, or I don't know if he borrowed it off of a story or a book. I might have to look that up. But I mean, when I saw Kill Bill 1 and it was over, I couldn't wait for Kill Bill 2 because you knew there was more, because she had unfinished business at the end of part 1. She's, they leave you with a cliffhanger, and there's going to be a part 2 because, you know, but each fight that she had, the whole story, the bride, the whole story of what the assassins did to her wedding party, and then thought that, and he thought he killed her by shooting her right in the head. She goes into a 4-year coma. She gets up and goes on this craziness of revenge, where she has a list, and you see her crossing the names off the list one by one. She leading up to Bill. And David Carradine, by the way, God bless him, rest his soul. I used to love him in Kung Fu. I used to love him when he make various appearances in movies, but he was never really like a main character star in a movie until these movies. And I think that Tarantino did that on purpose because he really had a respect for him, not only as an actor, but as his knowledge of martial arts and things like that. He kind of just fit to be the head assassin guy, to be the guy, and all the backstories. He took the time to show you all the backstories of each person before they had their fight with the bride, right? So they took you back and they showed you how Oren Ishii, played by Lucy Liu, why she became the way she became, why she became like the head of the Chinese mafia or whatever the fuck it was. And then, and then, and then Daryl Hannah. I mean, come on, Daryl Hannah. You've seen her in every other movie. She's like America's sweetheart, right?
Right.
She's like a friendly. In this movie, she is a vicious, cold, calculating bitch. I mean, she's terrible. She's bad. I mean, really bad. And I saw an interview with her once where she described playing this character was fun, was the most fun character she's ever gotten to play in her life, because she got to be the villain. Like, she got to be a villain. And I told you earlier how much I love villains. There's like 5 of them in this movie.
Yeah.
The Deadly Viper Assassin Squad. There's 5 villains, and they each meet their end one by one, and you're rooting for. And then, not that I'm spoiling anything, but when I'm saying all these things, but because if you haven't seen Kill Bill 1 and 2, what the hell's your problem? But anyway,
it's also been out for almost 20 years, so
her fight alone against the Crazy 88s. Oh my God. I mean, talk about a bloodbath. I mean, my son calls Kill Bill 1 and 2 a live action anime, because it's kind of like that. Where the blood comes out like a water fountain when somebody gets a limb chopped off with a samurai sword. And I just love all the little stories involved. And then her training with Pai Mei, that whole thing. And then you have, there's all kinds of stuff in both movies. And then it all comes together at the end. I love those movies. And I'll tell you right now, out of all the movies we've talked about tonight, those 2 are the ones I've seen the most.
Really?
I love, that's how much I love Kill Bill 1 and
2. One thing that I figured out about Tarantino was, if you look at the titles of the movies, Reservoir Dogs, you got Pulp Fiction, then you have Hateful Eight, Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and Glorious Bastards. This one kind of pretty much tells you what the movie's about just from the title, Kill Bill. Hey, the whole point of the movie is to go kill a guy named Bill. Correct. And I was not the biggest fan of either Kill Bills. I could have dealt without them, but I'm glad I watched them. But I mean,
Yeah.
I enjoyed them okay. I thought it was a kick-ass movie. But obviously not my top
Uma's
five.
all. I mean, Uma
Yeah.
Thurman's freaking awesome.
Yeah.
And I heard that she learned a lot of the kung fu, and
It's great.
she really wanted to look
The first
badass.
scene in the first movie, Kill Bill 1, was,
Hmm.
I think, one of the craziest things. She just comes into the kitchen. This woman is feeding her child. She just comes in and just fights her and then just winds up killing her. And you're just like, there's no remorse for this woman.
Right. And you wonder why, and then you figure out why.
Right. Yeah.
She's got nothing left.
Nothing left.
Yeah. Oh my God. Fantastic movie. And I even like Michael Madsen in it. Because he's just like he don't give a F redneck type guy who,
Yeah.
you know what I mean? Like he don't Bill's brother, Bud, or whatever his name was. He don't give a damn about nothing, and how he meets his demise is interesting too. And
right.
And then they have a Texas funeral involved there where she gets buried alive.
Oh yeah, that was crazy.
So I mean, that whole scene, you're thinking to yourself, well, wait a minute, she still has to fight Bill yet. So how's she gonna get out of this? You know what I mean? Like you don't know. So then they have to do a flashback to how her training with Pine May is the reason why she was able to get out of that.
Mm-hmm.
And then killing Bill himself, she does the 5-point, exploding heart technique.
Mm-hmm.
And he taught her, and Bill had told her he never teaches that to anybody. It's the most deadly blow in martial arts. You hit your opponent 5 different pressure points across the body, and when they walk away after they take 5 steps, they're dead.
Right.
So
crazy. Again.
Also, even though you're not a fan, I do have some news.
Okay.
And that is that he is working currently on a Kill Bill 3.
Okay. If he's working on a Kill Bill 3, is this going to be his 10th and final film? Or is it just going to...
I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know if it's his final film, but he's got everybody on board. He's got Uma on board. Of course, everybody else that was in the movies all died. So basically it's her. But if you remember, what was her name? What was her name? The one you mentioned earlier, who she was making her daughter cereal, and she
Vivica Fox.
Vivica Fox. Yeah, I just couldn't think of her name. Vivica Fox's daughter. After she wipes the knife clean, puts it back in the thing. She tells her, "When you're old enough, and you're still upset about what just happened today."
Oh,
I'm fine.
Wow.
Basically. So that's a sidebar there. The other part is now BB, who is Uma Thurman's daughter, is now grown up. And so there's a lot of ways they could go with this. You know what I'm saying? So
what are they going to...
BB, obviously...
They couldn't call it Kill Bill, though, could they? Because Bill's dead.
That's how they know it. Okay. I don't know if they're going to call it Kill Bill 3, but I mean, yeah, Bill is dead, but I mean, what else would you call it if it's that story taking place 20 years later?
Right.
What else are you going to call it?
Sure.
And I'm with all these movies kind of going back, like with Ghostbusters, where you don't have a Ghostbusters movie for 20 years, and then you come out with Afterlife and it does so well. I don't know why Quentin Tarantino wouldn't do it, but I just saw it. I saw it on IMDb that it's in pre-production, so I got excited. I don't know. You don't like Kill Bill as much as I do, but I got excited. I'm like,
but I would watch it. I would watch the third one. I like it enough to watch the third one. So I gave my 4 and 3, which were the Django and Inglourious Bastards. Now on to my number 2,
Yes.
which were here. And this took number 1 for the longest time, Al. I'm not gonna lie to you.
Mm.
And that's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. This movie, to me, this is considered a perfect movie in my eyes. It's the Leonardo DiCaprio and the Brad Pitt thing. Not a big fan.
Right.
So I was like, it's going to be okay. Then I realized that it's about the Manson family. And you're going to laugh, I am like enthralled with, I love serial killers. I love the weirdness of their minds. I just, for some reason, love how they work in a dark way. But
well, you're talking to a guy that I whenever they come out with a new documentary that with people that were actually involved with like Ted Bundy and this and that, the other thing, like I can't not check it out.
Right.
I'm not obsessed with serial killers, but I am obsessed with like how their minds work.
Me too. That's my point.
Like I watched these documentaries, and I saw the latest one. I think it was on Netflix, maybe about Ted Bundy, and it's crazy, the whole story of it all. Like you hear reports, or you heard about him, or you heard how many people or how many women he killed, or blah 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 blah, but you didn't like know the ins and outs and all the little stuff. So they did all that digging for you, and it's kind of cool. And then hearing him on tape and things like that, hearing him talk from his prison cell was pretty creepy. But anyway, go on. I'm sorry.
No, you're good. But man, I mean, I remember when this movie was over, I took the movie and I rewound it to the very beginning and I rewatched it. The only movie I've ever done that with before this one was John Wick. Was when I seen the end credits, I went all the way back and I rewatched it. And this movie is near perfect. Of course, it has the weird foot fetish that Quentin Tarantino has while in the movie theater. It has to have that in there. It has that weird thing. But I mean,
sure.
I don't love Westerns, but I enjoy a good Western. And he was kind of taking that in the 60s when the Manson murders were the thing. And that was crazy to me to see how the Manson murders could have and should have happened, in my opinion, was just killing somebody with a damn can of soup. You know what I mean?
Right.
And here's news. I don't know if you've seen this, Al, but the show that they were filming in the movie called Bounty Law, that is actually Quentin Tarantino is making that into a TV show, and Leonardo DiCaprio is going to star in it.
Oh, cool. Yeah, he seems to work with the same people over and over,
right?
Because he kind of, a lot of his movies have Samuel L. Jackson. A lot of his movies have, Leo. They have he goes back to what works for him and the relationships he's built. He's not like the favorite person in Hollywood. It's not like if Steven Spielberg's making a movie and he calls you, you're not going to say yes no matter what it is. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But with him, he has built relationships, and so he's become close to the people he's worked with over the years, and so that's why you see a lot of his movies feature Sam L. Jackson and
Leo and Brad Pitt, right?
Uma Thurman, but that's a good pick.
It's crazy because I was listening to some interview that because he wrote a book to this the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, and he was doing a bunch of interviews promoting it. And he has become known as one of the guys in Hollywood that if he writes a script, you need to read it word for word, because like if you go and you improv it, there could be one word in there that changes the whole movie that you don't say that's going to throw the whole thing off.
Right.
So, number 2 has to be it's Once Upon a Time in Hollywood. I mean, that is one that I am going to rewatch multiple times a year. It's amazing. There's not a boring part in it. It's amazing to me.
Yeah, it's the best film he's made in years. I mean,
Right.
let's face it. A lot of his best movies came out of the 90s.
Sure.
And then, even you, by your own admission, Kill Bill 1 and 2 came out in early 2000s, and you weren't a huge fan of that. And I'm sure there are more people who are a fan of Once Upon a Time in Hollywood and some of his other movies versus Kill Bill. It's a matter of taste. I think a younger generation might like Kill Bill, because of this, obsession with Japanese culture over the years, video games and things like that, like anime. So it appeals to them. And, my son was too young to watch that when they first came out. But when he was old enough to watch them, he found them himself, and they're two of his favorite movies, Kill Bill 1 and 2. So I get it, but Once Upon a Time in Hollywood is also my number 2.
Okay.
So we done talked about it enough, but for all the reasons that you said, well, I'll admit to you that I've only seen it once.
Okay.
I want to see it. I want to see it again, but since I watched it last, life's gotten a lot busier and things have gotten more hectic. And so my time for movies is limited to stuff that's appropriate for kids. I don't get to watch a lot of I don't get to watch a lot of age inappropriate things unless find myself maybe sick. I did have a battle with COVID in early January, where I was able to watch a few movies and shows that kind of have escaped me over the past couple of years. And I do have a Netflix recommendation if you haven't watched it already. After we're done with this list.
Yeah, but, sure. Because I got a couple more.
Because
go ahead. I'm sorry.
Because my son recommended a show on Netflix that's been out since for a couple years now, and I believe they have a few years now. I believe they have 5 seasons, but we'll talk about that in a bit. But
yeah,
but number two for me is also Once Upon a Time in Hollywood.
All right, Al. Before we get to number 1, do you go ahead?
For all the same reasons that you said for Once Upon a Time, I wouldn't call it perfect movie, but if it's not perfect, it's damn near.
Right.
Yeah, and I mean you can watch that movie without being a fan of the actors involved, without being even a fan of Tarantino, and still be entertained. And that's why it's good. You understand what I mean?
Yeah, no, 100%.
Like,
and it's
like
also
some people. Are you there?
Go ahead, Al.
Okay. Some people just don't like Tarantino, like either personally or they're just not a fan of his films, or maybe they don't get them. I mean, some of them are really, you gotta watch every moment and understand what's going on so that you don't get lost. And some people don't like to think that hard when they want to watch a movie. Some people just want to eat popcorn and enjoy themselves and laugh or cry or whatever. And that's fine. But the diehard Quentin Tarantino fans are going to, if they've never seen Once Upon a Time in Hollywood, are going to watch it just because it's a Quentin Tarantino fan. But if somebody a Quentin Tarantino film, but if somebody stumbles across it not knowing that it was directed by him, I think they'll be entertained anyway. That's how good the movie is.
And it's also one of those movies where you can only watch it once and still know how great it is. Like you mentioned you've only watched it once, but you realize from that first watching just how freaking great it is.
Right.
All right, Al. So before we go to our number one spot, do you have any others that you could have put on your list, but you just didn't
Well,
like it?
okay, earlier we mentioned Reservoir Dogs. Could have, should have made the list. Underneath the Django in my list. Um, I enjoy Jackie Brown too.
Okay.
Jackie Brown's a good one. Death Proof was another one that I liked of his, but those are my honorable mentions. Probably that didn't make the top five. Would be like Reservoir Dogs, Jackie Brown, and Death Proof.
I would put Death Proof on there as well. It's a little too weird for my liking, but I think the ending kind of made up for the weirdness that the movie was.
Right. That's what he does. Like, he takes you on this roller coaster and you don't know what the heck's going on, and then it ties it all together in the end.
Right. And he did it perfectly with that one, because I was lost most of the movie and I pay attention completely with a Tarantino film. But
yeah,
I have a feeling we're going to have the same number one pick here. So my number one pick for Quentin Tarantino is, and I watched this movie. Obviously, this movie came out in 94, 95, and I wasn't born,
94.
but I remember people watching it in school. I was, first grade, second grade, and these kids were watching this movie called Pulp Fiction. And I remember going, I'm not really allowed to watch HBO at night unless I'm sneaking down watching Bob Saget or something like that. But I'm going to try it. And then, of course, you're second, third grade. You don't really know what the hell is going on, and especially Pulp Fiction. But I remember one scene in particular that just kind of played memory in my mind, and it always stayed there. And I remember going back and I said, you know what, I was into high school, and I said, I'm going to go back. I'm going to watch that because I don't really know if I understand it. And it was the pawn shop scene with Bruce Willis that just stood out in my mind. And I remember when I rewatched it saying, wait a minute, this movie is not going in chronological order. So then that put me on this journey of, what the hell is the first part of the scene? What's this part? What's this part? What's the first part of the movie? What's the last part of the movie? And it could go either way. And I think that's how brilliant this movie is. Again, I use this word a lot, but this Pulp Fiction is another perfect movie, in my opinion, just because you don't know what's the first part of the movie, but does it matter? Because that doesn't have anything to do with the movie. It's crazy. And it makes John Travolta and Samuel L. Jackson stand out. But if you're looking at it, watching the movie, Bruce Willis is kind of the star of the whole entire movie, because he's in, a majority more than John Travolta is. And this Pulp Fiction is the movie that saved John Travolta's career, after that terrible roller skating movie he had. But Pulp Fiction is without a doubt always going to be number one.
Yeah, it's hard to top, right? I mean, it's
hard to
hard
top.
For Quentin. It's hard for Quentin Tarantino to top. I mean, even with Once Upon a Time, he I think he tried, because he knows deep down, and I don't know him personally, but Quentin Tarantino knows deep down that he'll always be remembered for Pulp Fiction. And Pulp Fiction is probably the first movie that people think about when you mention his name. I did a test. I did a test tonight at dinner. I asked my wife to name a Quentin Tarantino movie, and Pulp Fiction was the first words that came out of her mouth, and she's not even a big fan of it. The point I was trying to make is that that's the movie that's most associated with him, because it's by far the most popular one he's ever done. I mean, I know we said before that the Django made more money, but Pulp Fiction's a close second to that. And if that doesn't take into account how many times it's been watched, on TV, like
Mhm.
if it's being played on a network or if it's being streamed on Prime Video or anything like that, they don't count that, how many times it's been watched by people at home. The first time I heard of Pulp Fiction, I was watching Forrest Gump.
Oh wow, okay.
And Forrest Gump, I went to the theater to see Forrest Gump because I said, "Oh, Tom Hanks is doing another movie." The year before that, he got an Oscar for Philadelphia,
Mhm.
and me and my friends were all big movie buffs, like I still am. And so I'm like, "Well, he's doing another movie. Let's go see it." Tom Hanks is doing a movie game, and I didn't even know what it was about. I really didn't. I didn't see a trailer. They didn't have social media back then. It wasn't like now where you just click on YouTube and see what a movie's about. So when I went to go see Forrest Gump, I didn't even know what I was going to see. I just, I was excited because it was a Tom Hanks movie, right? Well, they had trailers just like any other movie before, and one of the trailers was Pulp Fiction.
Mhm.
And here I see John Travolta, and here I see Samuel L. Jackson, and they're standing there next to each other with guns. And some kid comes running out of a back room where he was hiding, and he shoots them like 5 or 6 times, and he
Misses
misses
every
each and
time.
every shot at point blank range. And then they lift their guns and they blow them away. So I'm like, wow, cool. And then you hear that music that like, and you see in the trailer, you see Uma Thurman and him dancing. And you're like, what the hell is this? Like
Mhm.
the trailer doesn't tell you anything. It just shows you bits and pieces. It shows you them shooting the kid. It shows Uma and John Travolta dancing, and it's got this really funky music. And you're like, what the hell's going on? So I was enthralled. So I had to go see it. And then it came out on videotape because that's back then, that's what they
Mhm.
did. They had video. And I bought it. It was probably one of the first movies that I bought on my own because people knew I liked movies. So when my birthday came up or Christmas came up, I always got movies. And if they knew I liked the movie, they would buy it. So I started to get this collection. And then eventually I switched the VHS to DVD and eventually to Blu ray and so forth. But anyway, so I do have a movie collection of I still have some VHS tapes, and one of those VHS tapes is Pulp Fiction because I bought it the moment it came out, and I swear to you, Dylan, I've probably seen Pulp Fiction over 100 times. So much so that I could probably quote it for you, but I won't quote it except for one quote, which is my favorite quote in the movie. And that's when Samuel L. Jackson is about to kill the kids after eating his big kahuna burger and drinking his soda. He
Right.
does he does his little Bible verse, and that is from Ezekiel 25:17, which reads, "The path of the righteous man is beset on all sides by the iniquities of the selfish and the tyranny of evil men. Blessed is he who, in the name of charity and goodwill, shepherds the weak through the valley of the darkness. And I will strike down upon thee with great vengeance and furious anger those who offend my brothers. And you will know my name is the Lord when I strike my vengeance upon thee." And if you hear that from that character, Jules, it meant your ass. I love that movie. I could watch it anytime and I could enjoy it. And when I hear somebody's never seen it, I make sure they watch it. and then they have questions because a lot of people do. Like the thing is, it's out of order. It's real basic. There's 4 stories going on at once. There's the hitmen, their point of view.
Mhm.
There's the boxer, who's Bruce Willis, his story going on. Then you have the gangster and his wife. You have Ving Rhames and Uma and their whole story going on. And then you have the diner bandits, which is Tim Roth, and I forget her name. But anyway, you have their story going on, and they all are 4 different stories going on, but they intertwine. And that's the beauty. And that's the beauty of Pulp Fiction. You don't need to know what it's about. You just need to enjoy the ride.
It's crazy because movies that I enjoy, and I'm like, man, my whole family has to watch this. So I sat, my sister and my mom, my dad down. I was like, we have to watch this movie. And I remember about 45-ish minutes in, maybe a little quicker than that, Vincent gets shot and killed, John Travolta. And I remember my mom going, well, he's the main character. He's already dead. And then at the very end, she sees him again and she's like, what is happening here? Did he just die? And I'm like, do you not understand what's happening here? No, it's just it's the shit show. I don't know. Like the movie is playing in different parts. I mean, it's out of order. You're trying to figure this out. That's the whole point. It's a puzzle watching this movie, and it's great. But I
love it.
I haven't watched it 100 times, but I've probably watched it at least 20 times. And there is one scene in the movie that I also have memorized. And it's Vincent and Jules, and they're going around, and Vincent goes, do you want some bacon? Nah, man, I don't eat no pork. But you Jewish? I ain't Jewish. I just don't dig on swine. Why not? Pigs are filthy animals. I don't eat filthy animals. Bacon tastes good. Pork chops taste good. Sewer rat may taste like pumpkin pie, but I ain't eating that filthy motherfucker. I remember that is the funniest scene, in my opinion, for Pulp Fiction.
So, the $1 million question about Pulp Fiction, Dylan. What was in the case? What was in the briefcase that when they opened it, it was glowing? And they never show you what's in the case. That has been a debate for 30 years.
I don't know if I have a guess, because I don't want to have a guess, because it just makes the movie less special if you have a guess. Like, it's kind of like Castaway, like what was in the package that he didn't open. Well, you're not supposed to know, but you knew it was kind of going to ruin the movie. I don't think I would want to have a guess, because it would just, because if you had a guess, like, let's just say if it was gold or whatever, that's going to change the whole dynamic of the story.
Right. Some people debate that there were diamonds in there because that would be a reference to Reservoir Dogs, because Reservoir Dogs, they stole diamonds. Diamonds don't glow inside a case like that. They illuminate if you have them in sunlight, or if you have them under a lamp, they shine. But if you open up a case from the darkness, they wouldn't illuminate a glow from themselves. And so there's all kinds of film theorists out there. I even watched one on YouTube, Matt Pat on YouTube. If you've never seen him, he does film theory. What was in the Pulp Fiction case? I think one of the ones he done is what was in the Pulp Fiction case, because he tries to scientifically prove what was in the case. And what would emit a glow like that. Some people have even theorized that it was the soul of Marcellus Wallace. I don't know where that came from, but I've heard solid gold, because solid gold would kind of emit a glow like that. I don't know what was in the case. My point is, we're not meant to know what was in the case.
Right.
But I brought it up because I always think it's an interesting thing to talk about when you're talking about Pulp Fiction, because they go through a lot of shit in order to protect that case.
Yeah.
So, but my favorite character in that entire movie is none of the ones we've mentioned.
Okay.
My favorite character in that movie is the Mr. Wolf, the guy who solves the problem
Right.
when they accidentally shoot the kid in the back of the car. They call the wolf, and he comes in this really hot car, and
Right.
he's a quick thinker, a quick talker, like that whole thing. And then, of course, you got Quentin Tarantino as Jimmy. The whole thing takes place at Jimmy's house, and the whole the conversation he has with Jimmy about replacing well, your Uncle Marsalis, would like to replace your sheets. How much sheets, I like silk myself, and he gives them even more money. So like the whole thing, the whole scene of Mr. Wolf taking care of that particular problem and the steps he tells them to do, and then he hoses them down, hoses the blood off outside with the cold hose, and
Right.
they end up wearing dorky t-shirts and shorts, and that's what they end up in at the diner at the end. They end up still wearing those clothes because they never, for some reason, they decide to go straight to the diner and get something to eat, and instead of going home and getting real clothes on. But
Right.
that whole scene where Mr. Wolf takes care of that problem is my favorite scene, and he's my favorite character.
Yeah, he's an underrated character in all the Tarantino films, I think. Like, he is just one that you always look away from, because he's just not, you know what I mean? I don't really know what I'm trying to say, but he's not one that you would think of as being Tarantino quality as a leader.
Right. And I don't even know who he is. Like, I mean, he's a problem. I mean, it's Harvey Keitel, right? And he solves problems and obviously works for himself. He doesn't seem to be the kind of guy to take orders from Marcellus Wallace. Like he's a guy that has worked with him before or is an associate of his, but he doesn't work for Marcellus. He's got too much of a head on his shoulders. But when Marcellus Wallace tells Samuel L. Jackson that he's sending the wolf, he says, "Oh, you're selling the wolf? Damn, that's all you had to say."
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So he's got a reputation of solving problems, and he's a quick thinker, he's a quick talker, he's a quick driver. Everything's fast, and it's really good. It's a really great character, and I think it's underrated in that movie because everybody remembers that movie for Uma and John Travolta and Willis and Samuel, but Harvey Keitel should get a mention there.
Yes. Well, Al, before we jump off here, I want to talk about, like you mentioned, you had some shows and some movies you wanted to recommend. Tell me some of your best ones you've seen so far since we last talked, or some of the worst ones you've seen.
Worst ones? I'm not, I know sometimes I watch something and I'm like, now this just ain't for me, but I'm not gonna crap all over them because I understand what they were trying to do, but I mean, my wife watches a lot of shows and then she tries to get me into them, and a lot of the ones that she gets into are a little bit more dramatic for my taste. I don't want to say they're like chick flicks or anything because she likes to binge watch. Like, she likes to watch something that has seasons so that it's not just over and you got nothing else to watch.
Oh,
if
wow.
you watch a
Okay.
movie, you know what I mean? So she likes to get herself involved in like a something that has a season 1 through 5, and she can watch, a couple episodes here and a couple episodes there, and she's always got something to watch. But so I'm not gonna say there's no, and I'm not gonna crap
Right.
on any of the ones that are out right now. But since I've talked to you last, I've die-hardly watched 2 shows. And that would be Ozark, the new season of I'm sorry, 3 shows. The new season of Ozark, which I'm glad to say is not over, because they released 7 episodes for season 4.
Yes.
But they're gonna release 4 or 5 more, because if you go on Netflix and you look at the Ozark episodes list, it says season 4 part 1. So there's going to be a season 4 part 2.
There's going to be.
I don't know when
they're doing 7 more episodes. They're doing 14 episodes this season, the final season,
and that's supposed to be the final season, right? So if the first 7 episodes are any indication of how this thing's going to play out,
dude,
it was, awesome.
Awesome. Can we agree on this? This is the best season of Ozark, and I'm not just saying it because it's new.
Oh yeah.
Because last season, season 3, to me, drug on, and it was like, I want to watch it, but again, nothing's going to happen. But let me tell you something, man. If you guys are an Ozark fan and have not watched the newest season of Ozark, this is the best season of the show. The ending of the season 4 part 1 finale was, I said, holy shit, when it happened, because I said, what the fuck is happening here? And it was, oh my dude, I'm ready for it, but I'm not ready for it, because Jason Bateman just proves that he is not just a comedic actor. This guy is
I love him.
Great. I'm a big Jason Bateman fan, but for Ozark, it's I want to see.
I guess I said the right one. Huh?
Yeah. I want to see what's going to happen.
Ozark was great.
I want to see what's going to happen, but I don't want it to be over.
The other one that I watched was this last season of Cobra Kai.
Okay. I watched it
since
too.
Since I talked to you last. And of course, I'm a huge mark for the whole series. I really love the whole thing, and the storylines that they're doing now, and I'm a huge fan of the Karate Kid back in the day, so it just kind of plays on my heartstrings, and I'm sure that's the target audience there, is people who maybe grew up in the 80s, because it's got a lot of 80s references, and it's and let me shout out William Zabka, man, because that guy, it's easy. I think, to me, I think it's easy for Machio to fall back into the Karate Kid role, because he did 3 movies, and he's fallen back into that role before. So I think it was easy for him kind of to do this, in my opinion. But Zabka hasn't done anything in acting for 20 years. And so to all of a sudden just kind of come in, he got himself in shape, because he had gained a little bit of weight. So he lost weight. So he kind of looked more like Johnny. And then to pull off what he's pulling off and like falling. I mean, he's Johnny. He's Johnny.
Yeah.
Like, he's Johnny, just 20 or 30 years older. That's all it is. He's Johnny Lawrence. It's great.
And
so,
this
and you kind of
No, you go ahead. You're good.
Johnny Lawrence, just what you would picture would have happened to Johnny Lawrence, whoever's writing this thing. That's how I picture him. Like, I picture him, not doing too well in relationships, drinking a lot, not being too successful, kind of still being that asshole, chip on his shoulder type guy. Like, but again, the cool part about this series, if people haven't watched it out there, they should. But if the cool part about the Cobra Kai series is that you kind of see that, if you see things from Johnny's point of view, maybe he wasn't exactly the villain
Hmm.
in the first movie. Do you know what I mean?
Right.
Like he might have just been under the bad influence of Sensei Kreese, not really having a father figure around, so kind of following whatever Sensei Kreese had to say. So that kind of brought the combination of everything he's been through, and then Sensei Kreese teaching him to show no
Let
mercy.
me interrupt you
Kind of
here because I got a question for you. You mentioned that you didn't think that maybe this is not, hey, Johnny is not the bad guy. It was Kreese. What if it turns out
right,
after watching this season that Kreese may not be the bad guy after all?
right, yeah, right, yeah. And it's cool to see Terry Silver's character
Yeah.
reemerge. When you first see him, he looks like Mozart going berserk on the piano, or it's our Beethoven or something.
Well,
Like
when
he's
I
just
first saw him, because they did a teaser trailer a while ago, and
yes,
I kind of
yes,
forgot about his character. Kind of just forgot
right,
about it, and I said, "Who the fuck is this guy?" And then you remember, you go,
right.
"Oh, wow, okay." But yeah, to sum it up, Cobra Kai. This season of Cobra Kai was I don't know if it was their best season, but it was a really good season. I wasn't disappointed. I'm actually they've already filmed the next season. They filmed them back to back, so they're just waiting on this one to come out. So I'm kind of ready for the new season to come out and just figure out what all is going to happen here.
So as I said before, I was sick in the first
Hmm.
first 2 weeks of January, and my son recommended a show that I can't stop watching.
Okay.
And that's on Netflix too. And I don't know if you've seen it or not yet, Dylan, but it's called Peaky Blinders.
Okay. I've been told, Al, by numerous people to start watching Peaky Blinders, but it's like 5 seasons in, and that's that's a
It is.
commitment.
That's a commitment. It is. It is, and every episode's an hour,
Ooh.
and each season has, I believe, 6 or 7 episodes.
Okay,
So
that's not that
it's a lot.
bad.
It's a commitment. But let me tell you what,
Okay.
you you like superhero movies,
Hmm.
so you know who Killian Murphy is.
Yes.
Um, Killian Murphy from, if in case anybody's listening to this and doesn't know who Killian Murphy is, he played the Scarecrow, Dr. Crane in Batman Begins.
Yes.
And excellent actor, always has been in almost every role he's ever been in, and this is no exception. Also, his arch nemesis in the show is Sam Neill, who you might know
Okay.
as Dr. Grant in Jurassic Park.
Right.
What sold me on Peaky Blinders, which sounds like a ridiculous title, but when you find out what Peaky Blinders means, it's not so ridiculous. Um, was I The first thing I saw was the cast. I saw
Hmm.
Killian Murphy. I saw Sam Neill. I'm like, okay, sign me up. I want to know what this is about. And not giving anything away, the show is based in the early 1900s in not Birmingham, because that's Alabama,
Right.
Birmingham,
England.
England. And it takes place at a time where kind of mobs and mafias were just starting to create themselves.
Okay.
You had gangs back then. In America, there was gangs in New York City, but in back in England, you had Irish gangs, you had Scottish gangs, you had um, Italians, but I mean they were Italians who moved to England. So yes, they're Italian, but they still have British accents. So it's
Right.
kind of weird to see them in that light. But anyway, so you had all these gangs form up, and organized crime hadn't been a thing quite yet, but it was starting to bubble in both the colonies and over in England. But this just keeps you focused right on England, and Killian Murphy plays the head guy, and his name is Tommy Shelby, and basically it's about his family, and what they go through to try to not only come into power, but also to try to maintain it. And I'm telling you, you get hooked from episode 1. It's not like episode 1 drags on and you have to watch 2 or 3 episodes. Some shows are like that. Some shows you got to watch 2 or 3 episodes to really get into it. No, it'll sink its claws in you on episode 1. I swear to you. And seeing Sam Neill as a villain.
Oh yeah, I bet that's amazing.
And it's funny because he's the chief inspector. He's the law and order in the movie. He's the guy who's investigating Thomas Shelby. Thomas Shelby's supposed to be like the head of a crime family. And so he's supposed to be the bad guy. But you find yourself, whether you like it or not, rooting for him because he goes through so much for his family. And it's kind of written that way where he's the vindictive, vicious bastard, head of a crime family type guy who has to do terrible things and he has to kill people and whatever he's got to do. But Sam Neill is tracking him down and trying to get evidence on him and trying to put him away for good, or maybe get hung. You know what I mean? But they wrote Sam Neill's character where he does even more dastardly things because he thinks in his mind that he has to in order to sink to Tommy Shelby's level in order to catch him. And the first 2 seasons are all about that relationship between Killian Murphy's character and Neill's character. You just get enthralled. And you get sucked into a world which I'm pretty sure existed back in the early 1900s. And it kind of rolls into by the 3rd season, you start to roll into the 20s. So, definitely recommend to all your listeners and anybody who's out there listening within the sound of my voice. If you have not seen Peaky Blinders, I cannot recommend, other than Ozark. If you've never seen Ozark, you've been under a rock. But anyway, if you've not seen Peaky Blinders before, check it out. I promise you will not be disappointed. And the host of this show can vouch when I say that. I mean it.
Yeah, I think you kind of sold me with the Sam Neill being the villain because this is kind of a character he's not portrayed, at least of what I've seen of the Sam Neill that I know. So I've been told a time or two to watch it, and you've told me again, so I kind of have to watch it now. I may start it here in the next couple of weeks, but a couple of TV shows before we jump off here that I've started watching that maybe you like, Al. I am I don't know if I like binging as much as waiting for the next week to come. I'm not too sure of which one I'm a fan of more. But I have to wait each week to watch Peacemaker on HBO Max. I know, Al, you're not a fan of John Cena's acting, but if you enjoyed the Peacemaker character in Suicide Squad, I was just finished an episode from this past week, and I said this show is one of the best shows I've seen, in the past couple of months, along with Ozark and along with Cobra Kai. Peacemaker it's funny. It's got a lot of action, and there is a lot of times where I gasped in the show because I said, "Oh crap, I didn't see that coming." So, because I think James Gunn just does a brilliant job with any movie that he's a part of, and of course the TV show where he can do whatever he wants. So Peacemaker is a great one as well.
Yeah, I know I've said that I am not a fan of John Cena's acting, but I did like him in Suicide Squad. I did like that character, and it's one that's been on my radar. I just haven't gotten around to it because I've been stuck in Peaky Blinders. It's
Now,
like I told you.
I will warn you, Al, and all the listeners there. I don't know how old your kids are, Al, or what the rating is you let them watch, but there is a lot of sex, nudity, and a lot of language in Peacemaker. So I mean, I just put that on your radar that there's a lot
Well,
of this
my
stuff.
kids. Well, my kids know this. They're not allowed to watch anything that has anything like that. I mean,
Okay.
they kind of stick to Disney Plus.
Okay.
So I mean, yeah, that's basically, the long and short of it for my kids. They stick to Disney Plus and they watch old school stuff and anything animated,
Right.
educational. I hope it's educational. Sometimes if they watch stuff that's I try to steer them in the right direction. But yeah, Peacemaker, I did hear that about Peacemaker, and that's why it's not on Disney Plus. That's
That's
why
right.
it's on other.
100%.
Right.
Um,
So yeah, so I mean, that being said, I will give it a look see, but like I said, I've been
right.
as you said before, Peaky Blinders is a commitment because I'm only on season 3, like one of the first 2 or 3 episodes. Because I can only watch like maybe one episode
Yeah.
every couple of days, and they're an hour long. And I can only watch it when my kids are like in school or in bed, whichever chance I
That's
get.
what kills me about TV shows are they are, especially with the streaming services now, they can make them as long as they want to, but they're like an hour, and it's kind of like watching a movie. Like it's a commitment.
Yeah, but like I said, you just once you watch episode 1, you're gonna want to know what happens next, and then they leave you hanging at every episode, and that's what they do, and it's just it's one of those things where it's like, okay, who's gonna die next, and it's violent, and you mentioned that there's sex and nudity and things like that in violence in Peacemaker. You
Mhm.
got all that and a
Okay.
bag of tricks in Peaky Blinders. Just to put that out there for those who I'm sitting here recommending Peaky Blinders. It's not for children. It's very ultra violent. There are sex scenes. There's plenty of nudity because back in the early 1900s and in the 20s, prostitution ran rampant, and they
Right.
really didn't crack down. They really didn't crack down on it in jolly old England as much as over here in the States. But so it was kind of maybe frowned upon in society, but people knew about it and kind of looked the other way. But anyway, um Killian Murphy is freaking awesome. I mean, you've never seen him in this light, and he just you got to check it out if you have the time. I know it's an investment.
No, I will definitely check it out. Have you seen any new movies as we kind of wind down here? We're going on about an hour and a half. I know we got to go, but have you seen any
Well,
new
we
movies lately?
we talked, but the last time I talked to you, we talked about movies we wanted to see, and you
Right.
saw Spider. You saw Spider Man,
Yes. 4
and
times in the theaters.
and I'm glad that I talked to you into seeing Ghostbusters.
Mhm.
But we talked about another movie, the new Matrix,
Oh,
which I was
Jesus
excited.
Christ.
Correct. And
Ah,
and that reaction right there
dude,
is kind of the same reaction I had because I
bro.
don't want because listen, Dylan, I don't want people thinking that every time you and I are talking about movies, we're talking about all these great movies that we've seen and like we think that all movies are good. Because listen, anybody listening to this right now, I am much bigger fan of the Matrix trilogy than your host is. And I look at it all as kind of one big 3-part movie, and I just love the whole, not just the special effects of it all, but just kind of the story involved. So Matrix 4, if you want to call it that, I was kind of too excited is the best way to put
I
it
was too.
for it.
I was excited as well because, again, you're continuing a series that kind of, the third one kind of just left you in the dust. You didn't know where to land, and I was like, okay,
Right.
this one is going to prove it all. What a shit show the Matrix Resurrections was, huh?
Oh,
I mean, dude, I know you saw we were commenting back and forth on my Facebook post. I was complaining so much about, because they turned it into a superhero movie, and they had the same
right.
guy that made John Wick, and Keanu
Yeah.
Reeves was an executive producer. And I said, oh shit, yeah, this is going to be great. And dude, it was one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my life. It was not good.
Terrible.
The acting was ferocious, even from Keanu Reeves. It was like they were
Yeah,
making.
but see, the thing is, though, he can only do so much. Like he can only do the script he was given. You know what I mean?
Yes,
So
but
I
you
blame
would.
the right. I can't blame. I can't blame Keanu Reeves. I can just blame the script. Whoever wrote that shit show should have burned it.
Well, and I will also. I'm not going to take up for Keanu, and I'm not going to not talk him out of it. But he was an executive producer. He could have said no to the script. He could have said no to this. He could have said no to the director, but he didn't. And this makes me wonder, is Keanu Reeves headed down the same path Nicolas Cage is? I hope not. Because Nicolas Cage now will take any movie. And speaking of Nicolas Cage, I watched Pig with Nicolas Cage, and that movie was effing phenomenal. I don't know if you've watched that.
Yeah, you did mention that. And the last time we talked.
But the Matrix was just one big disappointment after another. I mean, the change that they made,
it doesn't even deserve. It's so bad that it doesn't even. I have no words for it.
I remember when I finished.
It's that bad.
It was so bad that it put me in a bad mood. Like, I have seen 2 movies. One I watched last week, and The Matrix, that were just so bad that I was like, I need to go take a nap. Fuck it, I need to go take a nap, because if not, I'm going to be in a bad mood. It was, right. Yeah, but The Matrix was. I don't think anybody liked that movie. Like, everybody is like, that's ass. No. I don't think anyone liked it.
No, and I made the mistake of watching it before I got recommended not to watch it.
Well, see, I did too, because I watched it. It came out midnight. I was watching it 12:01. I was excited for it. Yeah. I was excited, and then I said,
"Yeah,
damn, it was rough."
Yeah. So, if you haven't seen Matrix Resurrections,
don't watch it.
Do yourself a favor. So that just goes to show you that Dylan and I do not love everything out there. Like when we recommend something, we mean to recommend it. We don't just off the cuff, like, say, give every movie out there flowers. So
I'm actually going to watch House of Gucci tonight. We're recording this on Saturday night. I'm actually going to watch it. I've heard mixed reviews about it. But I think the story.
How are you watching that? May I ask?
It's on streaming now. You can buy it.
Oh, you can buy it. Okay.
You can buy it or rent it. Yeah, I'm watching it from my Apple TV.
I was kind of waiting for it. I was kind of waiting for it to show up on either Prime or HBO Max, whichever came first.
Well, there's this new Bradley Cooper movie that's on HBO Max, like Nightmare Valley or something like that. And I got about 20 minutes into it, and I want to finish it, but it's not something I'm rushing to go finish. Especially when there's like a full frontal scene of Bradley Cooper within like the first 30 minutes. So
Ew.
that kind of just threw me for a loop. I said, "The fuck is this? what is going on?"
Hey, well, I mean, I'm sure women who love Bradley
Right?
Cooper would like to hear that.
Yeah,
You know,
women go watch it.
right. I mean, you know, if you have a thing for Bradley Cooper, or if guys out there, you guys have a thing for Bradley Cooper, then there you go.
There you go.
But I mean, I like him as an actor, but I don't
Yeah.
know if I'm gonna rush this full frontal scene. But anyway, I am probably going to watch an episode of Peaky Blinders before I hit sack when I'm done with you here.
Well, brother, look, let's go ahead and call it a day today, man. We've been on here almost 2 hours.
Yep.
We can talk forever. I know we're gonna have another episode, not right now, but in the near future, we're gonna come up with some crazy theory we want to talk about, and we'll get you back on here at the end of the year, and we're gonna make it a tradition to do the best movies of the year each year. So appreciate you coming on
I
here, Al. It
appreciate
means a
it.
lot to me.
Well, Dylan, I appreciate you having me, brother, and I'm available anytime. I love your show. I listen to a lot of them. I'm not gonna lie, I don't listen to all of them, but I listen to a lot of them, especially when it's something that you know piques my interest or something I'm interested in that you're talking to, and I'm happy for you on how well the show's doing, and that you're getting accolades from all sorts of states and things like that. That's kind of cool. That you're spreading out there, man. Just keep doing your thing, and I'm gonna keep listening, and I'm available to you anytime. And if you want to do that end of the year thing every year, I'm in. I'm all in.
Well, brother, look, thanks for coming back on, and thanks for Dano Seasoning for sponsoring this episode of the Hodgepodge Podcast. All that information is going to be in the bottom link of the podcast. Al, again, the big Albowski, thanks for joining me. Have a good one, brother.
Yeah, you too, brother. My pleasure.
All right, see you later.